What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Ideal Offseason. This is the series where I get to put the GM cap on for a little bit and help a team in the NBA navigate their offseason. We aim to make this as realistic as possible. I know you guys have probably heard this explanation before if you've been watching the series at all. If not, go watch the other ones. But like, take the San Antonio Spurs, for example. Like, they're not winning a championship next year, but how can we make them just a little bit better in the offseason to where they can start to build on some of those little successes they had this year? But if it's a team like the Lakers and they got LeBron, obviously they're trying to win a championship, so we're trying to help them with that. So hey, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point. We just crossed 1,500 subscribers, and we just had our first video. It was in this series, crossed 10K views, so thank you guys so much. I'm not surprised the New York Knicks one did well. You Knicks fans are very passionate, and you have a lot of mean things to say all the time. But anyway, let's get into the video. But alrighty, we got an interesting team here, the Charlotte Hornets. This is actually, I pushed them up the list a little bit because you guys requested it in the comments, so thank you very much. I promise you I read and respond to all the comments because there's a little thing on the app that can do so. But Charlotte Hornets, interesting season again for them. In real life, they've just kind of torn down their entire front office and everything. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight because I've been in the NBA, I've coached within the ranks and everything there, and I've got a lot of people that go in and out of it. I know some of the players and everything. I've got connections places, right? There's two franchises that nobody wants to really be a part of. It's the Washington Wizards and the Charlotte Hornets. I'm sorry to say that or whatever. We hope that the Charlotte Hornets are going to start to turn it around with their new front office that they've got. We hope that with like new ownership and everything and just people trying to be better, that we can see some improvements, right? Because there's just been a lot of turmoil inside the team. The players that they have on the team have been getting into a lot of trouble, right? It's clearly not a strong culture from the top bottom. They make a lot of poor roster decisions all the time, and the success just has not been there. We've got star players like LaMelo Ball who should be dominating, but they get hurt all the time, right? But we've also got some other promising young players on this team. Brandon Miller had a phenomenal rookie season that was overshadowed by the battle of Chet and Wemby, especially for a team who had little to no offensive creativity at all. Did you guys know the Charlotte Hornets were #1 last season in isolations? Why? Who? Exactly. There's no good answer to it. Brandon Miller was just out there trying to make it happen, and he had his struggles early on in the season with like finishing at the hoop and things like that. Ended up working out for them. They ended up making some trades to acquire some more picks and everything with the PJ Washington trade. PJ Washington, I know he looks good now. Players just aren't going to thrive in Charlotte most of the time, but we're hopefully changing that, right? We're hopefully changing that. Grant Williams is here now. He's an interesting piece for us. Maybe not a part of the long-term vision, but he's here for now. Mark Williams, I think, is a very interesting center. I think he's really talented, a perfect pairing with LaMelo Ball. And we picked up Trey Mann, who had some really solid moments once he was part of the Gordon Hayward trade from OKC. So I want to make sure that Trey Mann is given an opportunity to be successful. But anyway, let's dive into some of the specifics right here. Let's take a look at cap space first. And I'll mind you, currently on the roster, we only have one roster spot left. There's 14 contracts on here. There's a lot of things that we can do with these contracts. But let's start off here. We've got cap space. We could go out there and we could go make someone's life hell. Like, we could go offer like a restricted free agent, like a lot of money or something. Maybe they don't match. Like, I want to take advantage of the fact that we have some of this, and I want to go try and get an impact player to like show these guys like, hey, this is a new front office. This is a new regime. We're trying to win some fucking basketball games this year. So we've got $22 million to work with. We're going to have a little bit more probably by the end of this. We've got some picks in the draft and everything. Now, this isn't an elite draft class, and I want to keep this perspective as well. Are the Charlotte Hornets going to make the playoffs next year, even the championship? I don't necessarily know. Maybe a goal would be like the play-in or something like that. That's probably a good goal for this team because it's just not the most talented basketball team. It's not. Like, you hopefully have an all-star in LaMelo Ball, and hopefully Brandon Miller gets better, but like, let's be realistic about this, right? So we're going to have the 6th pick this year. Next year, we have our own pick, which is still going to be valuable, right? Let's presume that we're still going to be in the lottery. Next year's class is supposed to be really, really good, and there's some real dynamic players in there. I'm very curious if we can try to snag a late 2025 first-round pick with somebody on this team so that we can try to move up and get the exact player that we want next year if we need to. Like, I'm trying to make this realistic. We're trying to look not just for next year, but the best way to position this franchise moving forward. So I want to see if we can pick up another 2025 pick somehow with this. But without further ado, let's move on to the roster itself. LaMelo Ball's making his money. I get it. He gets hurt a lot. Nothing we can do about that right now besides hope that we can bring in a better training staff and that he'll be better. Davis Bertans, second highest contract on the team, and he's got an interesting contract right here. it's not fully guaranteed. Davis Bertans is not the greatest basketball player in the world. At one point, he was a real lethal catch and shoot 4 that could move, not with the basketball, but without it, really, really well around screens. Has not been that since he signed that big contract. This is the last year of that contract. Only $5 million of it is guaranteed. Otherwise, we could early terminate him if we want to. And that's why I put the 5 here. I don't feel the need to just kill the contract. And here's why. We've got cap space already, and it's not like we're going out and getting like Paul George and LeBron James, right? Just not going to happen. But let's say somebody becomes unhappy throughout the season, right? That happens all the time in the NBA. Stars get traded, right? We've now got a Davis Bertans that we can throw in a trade or something where we can bring in one of those better players or something because we've got the salary cap filler to help it work, right? While also he's not so bad to take on anymore because it's the last year of his contract anyway. And actually, when does it become completely guaranteed? I'm on Fanspo right now. I wanted to take a look at this. It becomes fully guaranteed on January 10th. So if we make the trade before then, they don't even have to pay him the rest of it. They can early terminate him. I don't know if they can actually early terminate him during the season, but they could just cut him and only $5 million of it is guaranteed. So that could be a phenomenal financial thing to dangle in front of somebody. So I'm going to keep Bertans on the team. I know he's not going to help us much basketball-wise, but you know what? Like, it's totally fine. It's fine for now. Grant Williams, Brandon Miller, they're on the team, right? Micic, another guy that we got in the OKC trade, the backup point guard, had some really good moments for Charlotte in his backup point guard role. Happy with him on the team. Cody Martin, making a bit too much money for the level of production. For perspective, 7 points a game, not shooting the 3 ball very effectively. You don't get a ton else from him. Actually, more assists than I would have thought, but I guess they needed some ball handlers last season with LaMelo going down. Not as effective as his brother, but he's on the team. Again, another guy that we could throw in with a Bertans or something and try to make something happen. Nick Richards. One of the most underrated players in the NBA. I fully believe Nick Richards could start for a handful of NBA teams right now. Not a ton of them, but I think a handful. And I think he would be an impact player on almost all of them. Nick Richards, a really good athlete, really good defensive player. I just think he's got really good instincts. He's a guy I want to see if we can't turn into like a late first round pick. A championship team that can get a real cheap player and they can just dump us one of their picks or something like that, one of their first round picks. Something I want to explore. Seth Curry, his contract is not fully guaranteed going into this season, but you know what? I like having the veteran Steph Curry on there. He's a Charlotte boy and everything because of his dad. So we're gonna be keeping Seth on the team. I just like having a shooter and a stable presence in the locker room. Mark Williams has a team option. He'll be coming back. Trey Mann has a team option. Oop, I did not mean to go all the way down there. We're fine. Trey Mann's coming back. Nick Smith. Young guard that I'm not particularly high on, but we've got him under contract and everything, so let's at least let's explore it a little bit. I'm not too high on him. I view him as kind of one of those modern players coming in, kind of like the Jalen Greens, if you will, that just don't quite understand how to play basketball. They just played a ton of AAU and they could jump high when they were kids, and they haven't figured out the game, so I don't know how high his ceiling is, but we'll be bringing him back anyway. JT Thor, a guy that just hasn't quite found his footing in the NBA yet. Like, I know he's had like a moment here or there. Everybody does. Oh, not everybody, but it's just, I don't think it's worth it for the amount of roster spots that we have left because I do want to bring in a couple different faces. So I am not going to pick up, I keep pressing control down. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to be picking up JT Thor's option. He is going to come off the roster here to open up another roster spot for us and free up just a little bit more cap space. And then we got Alexei Pokusevski, a former, was he a lottery pick for OKC? I think so, just big skinny dude, like really interesting movements or whatever, but I don't see a ton of value in him as a player. I'd rather go get some other like vets or something to try to help correct the culture of this team, so I am not going to be picking up Pokusevski's contract. I think we're fine. I think we'll respectfully decline, and we will roll out with this roster for the season. Obviously, this isn't the complete roster, whatever, but at the end of kind of making decisions and everything, this is what I'm thinking, right? So we now have $26 million in cap space. We gained a little bit more. 3 roster spots to work with, which is good because we plan on drafting 2 people in itself, right? And we'd probably like to use them on this. And then let's see if we can't just go get like an impact free agent or something. But before we even do that, I want to go into the draft. And I want to see if we can do something for Nick Richards, right? Because Nick Richards has 2 years left on his contract, is an extremely valuable asset in that sense. He's healthy right now. This is probably the most valuable that he can be. And there's a couple teams that I can think of where it would make sense to go. So I want to go here and go to Fanspo. If you guys don't know, Fanspo is this really cool website with all these cool tools that you can use and everything. So let's use Fanspo to try to help us make a deal. And the first team I'm thinking about, and this is going to be me kind of live exploring this. Do the Golden State Warriors have a 2025 pick that they can give us? And they do. So here's the catch, right? Technically, they couldn't trade this pick right now because of is it the stipend rule? Is that what it is? I can never remember the names of the rules, but you can't trade like consecutive first, and they don't have their first round pick in this year's draft. So this would technically have to happen after the draft, right? But the Warriors are trying to build one more team around Steph Curry, right? And they've been trying to find a center for years. And I think Nick Richards is their answer. 26 years old, can run, jump, and dunk, play defense, things like that. So and he's cheap, right? So what if we trade him just to the Warriors? Like, let me just take a look at it, right? Just want to take a look at it. And you know what? We'll even say that they can put a top 5 protection on it, right? Just to make them feel better. If they completely bottom out for whatever reason, they're not missing out on next year's like super elite draft class, right? Let's try this trade. What is it? Okay, it failed. The Warriors do not have the available cap space. That's totally fine. Let's start talking about it. So why is that? It's because they've got guys like Chris Paul on the team, right? Like, what's up with Chris Paul's contract right now? That's what I need to know. So Chris Paul's contract is non-guaranteed for this. So is there a way that we can just say that Chris Paul won't be on the team next year? Are we waive for the remaining? Okay, so I think we can waive Chris Paul and say that none of it is guaranteed. So his contract has been updated. Can we now try this trade now? What does it come out to? It's still a failure. Interesting. Yeah, they're still negative in the cap space. That's interesting. Okay, so what else can we do? There's a player option here. There's a team option here, a team option here. Is there anywhere else that we can free up some cap space for them to be able to make a move like this? Or do we just have to, like, take on a contract from them? What if the answer is here in Guy Santos? Is it Guy or Guy Santos? Because his contract, I know, isn't completely guaranteed. What happens if we do just something like this? We've got success now. I don't think this is such a bad trade. Like, we get their first round pick, but it's protected, right? So we try to get in, and they're going to hopefully be making a bunch of other moves to try and make their team competitive next year. This is a way for them to get a starter caliber center on the team right away. They'll also have Trace Jackson Davis. Maybe they're trading Kevon Looney then because of it, because he's a tradable contract and someone that can help people, right? We take on Guy Santos, and then we end up cutting him by the end of it so that we don't actually have to take him on at all. I think that this works out perfectly for us. So that means that Nick Richards is gone. I know, we'll try to address the backup center thing, and I know that there isn't a great backup center market out there right now, and so that is a little bit scary in a sense. Like, I totally sympathize with you guys on that if that's something that you guys are feeling. This is now the Warriors. This is a 25 first, and we now have that it's 1 through 5 protect, right? Okay. Cool. We've picked up another first round pick. We've cleared up even a little more cap space, which is fine. We don't necessarily need all of it, but it is something, right? So what do we want to do now is we probably want to go to the draft and use our 6th pick and see who we can get here. Maybe somebody falls to us or something, but for the time being, like, this is who we got. And what do we think we need? Like, we just kind of need some sort of talent. I'm thinking like another wing or something like that, right? That could be kind of cool. Like, in theory, you could go get a point guard and let LaMelo guard 2s at points just because he's got the size. And it should also be known that Brandon Miller, we can move him over to the 2, and he played fine at the 2 at times this season. And we could just go really big and just pick up another wing or something here. There's not a ton of wings I absolutely love in this class, but it's just things to keep in mind. Alrighty, so that brings us back to Fanspo, where we can kind of use their AI to make this a little bit more realistic, because I don't want to just do this thing where I'm like, oh, I think this guy will be available here, so that's where he's going to go. Trying to use a more realistic way to predict what's going to happen here. And what do we have here? Interesting. Okay, I've got some players that I'm interested in. I've got a couple ideas, so let's walk through them. Obviously, Nikola Topic is here. He's a guy that some people have thought could go like 1, 2, 3 at points in this draft, but he just has not played a ton of basketball. And he recently got hurt again. He's got a knee injury. I don't know what the problem is. I've seen a bit of him play, or I've seen him play just a real little bit. I need more film before I can make like a real like assessment of him, but he's very aggressive getting to the hoop. He's very strong, very good passer, great size for a point guard. Seems a little redundant to have next to LaMelo though, so I'm not all that interested. Reed Shepherd's an interesting player and maybe makes sense to have another shooter out there, but I don't don't want to use like the 6th overall pick on Reed Shepherd because I feel like he's going to be too much of a deficiency on defense. And I know you guys will come out here with like his steal and block percentage was really, that's not going to happen in the NBA. It's just not going to happen. He can be a smart defender all he wants, but as soon as the swings start happening and everything, and he can't close out effectively on people, it's going to be a problem. He's going to get muscled at points. People will attack him. Just not all that interested about it. These next 3 guys, though, these are maybe even 4. These are the guys I want to talk about. We've got Dalton Connect, who I think he's going to keep rising in the draft boards because as people get some of these guys these type of guys in, they're going to be like, okay, you know what? Maybe this isn't the class to try and swing for a home run on so we don't get a bust. Let's just go with something that we're pretty sure is going to work, and that's what Dalton Connect is. Just a really lethal shooter, one of the best scorers there was in college basketball this year. Can really light it up. He's got a scorer's mentality. Should be able to play solid defense once he kind of learns a little bit more about it because he's got a good frame and he's a pretty solid athlete, actually. Like, this isn't your typical, like, Caucasian shooter that's coming off the bench, right? Like, he's got a little bit of athleticism and attitude to him. So you feel pretty good about that. Stephon Castle is where I start to get a little bit more curious about things now. Stephon Castle was a freshman at UConn this year, and we saw a lot of really good things out of him. They've got him listed as a point guard, and I know recently, like, his camp's been saying, like, we want him to go to somewhere where he can go play point guard. I've talked to a bunch of NBA scouts about it. They're like, we're just calling BS on that, man. He's not a point guard. But he's got point guard-like skills, and honestly, and I believe this as well, I think he's going to be a lot more valuable as a secondary ball handler. And here's what a secondary ball handler is, right? A secondary ball handler is somebody that when the first guy gets going, right, probably LaMelo Ball, and he tries to create something, and that doesn't really work, you kick it out to a guy like a Stephon Castle or whatever secondary ball handler it is, they keep the offense moving, right? They get into their own action now because they can handle a little bit, they can distribute, things like that, but they're maybe not the ideal person to run the show. The downsides of Castle, not a good shooter at all. That's a bit of a concern, but elite defensive player. Really good instincts, sees the floor well and everything. I'm even just reading this like little, I don't know who wrote this or whatever. I like this. He's simply too good at too many things to not be a highly ranked prospect. Yeah, he's one of the best defenders. Like, he gets to the rim well. He is a good passer. He can handle a little bit. Really like Stephon Castle. We got Ron Holland as well, who's I shouldn't make this a mock draft video, but I just know that there's going to be a couple of different opinions on it. Ron Holland seems like the wrong guy for the Hornets to go and get right now as we're trying to correct culture and things. I'm not saying Ron Holland's a bad person. It's just Ron Holland has a lot of basketball still to learn. Like, his intangibles are very low right now. Very talented athletically, very skilled in a lot of fashions of basketball, but he just doesn't have the basketball up here yet, and I'm not sure the Charlotte Hornets are equipped enough to develop a guy like that right now. I don't think it's fair to him to get picked here. Cody Williams, very long-term project, but could be an interesting player. Maybe he becomes the long-term 3 or not. Wasn't as explosive as I kind of wanted to see him in some of his high school highlights or whatever. I think it's going to take him a bit to develop as well. And I'm kind of using the same logic as like Ron Holland. I think he's a lot smarter of a basketball player, but he has to grow into his body a lot more and tighten up a couple things. I want to go for someone that's got some skills, comes from a good place in UConn, can come in and probably start right away for us. I'm going to take Stephon Castle with the idea that we're going to be throwing him in at our 2 guard, giving him a lot of ball handling responsibilities, and more importantly, making sure Brandon Miller doesn't have to dribble the ball as much, because Brandon Miller is most effective when he doesn't have to dribble the basketball. He got a lot better at it this year, but he loves just like playing off ball, getting these catch and shoot opportunities, just being dynamic from out there, being a really good cutter. So if we have 2 elite passers out here and a good defensive wing with some size on the team, all of a sudden we've got 6'7", 6'6", 6'8", and we've got like dynamic playmaking and smarts out there on the court. I feel really good about that. So give me Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle would make roughly that much money. We get him for 4 seasons. How do I want to go about this? I'm just going to move these guys down a peg. This is now going to be Trey Mann, and you could say Trey Mann's probably a point guard too. So you know what? Let's slide Trey Mann into like no, we'll keep him at the 2. We'll keep him at a 2. He's going to play more than Seth and Nick Smith. Maybe we can even put Seth at a backup point guard or something, just to spread it out a little bit. We've got a lot of point guard capable players. We'll put it that way, right? So Nick Smith will move here, and the depth chart isn't that important right now. You guys understand that, but I'm just trying to space it out for my own ideas. So there's Stephon Castle now. Now we've got another rookie that we can kind of build around, right? He's going to be an instant help for us on defense, smart basketball player, comes from a smart program where he was learning NBA offense already. I like that a ton. Now we got the 42nd pick, so let's see what we can go do with that. Alrighty, so we're here at the 42nd pick now, and I'm not going to lie, I'm enamored with Baylor Shireman as a player. He was really impressive at the Combine. I got to watch a lot of his workouts and everything. I'm willing to bet that I think Baylor Shireman might work his way up to early second round, late first round maybe even, because again, I think this is going to be a draft class where you see some of the more okay, I think this guy can at least contribute a little bit, or at least he'll be able to put up a fight, and I'm not sure I want to swing on the fences with people. I like Baylor Shireman a lot here, but the question is, where does he fit in rotation-wise for us? Because he's going to fall into this range here, and the other reason I like him too is he's a little bit older, he's pretty mature, he's been around for a little bit. Do we really have room for him on the team though? We have to fill out a couple other spots on the roster still. I would compare him to Georges Niang. That's exactly how I'd see him. He's not very athletic, but a competent defender, an absolutely lethal shooter. I've got a lot of experience with Baylor Shireman actually, because he was in the conference I was in at one point, and he was very annoying to deal with. There's also Alex Caravan if we wanted to go for a little bit more of a project again. The thing with getting a guy that's a project is that there's not a ton of upside in Caravan either, because he's not the most athletic or anything like that. He's not the greatest rebounder or anything. He'd just kind of be a lengthy shooter, and I'm not sure that's really worth it with the pick. Maybe this is just something where we're just trying to get good people in and seeing what works, because here's the thing, right? We don't know if Nick Smith's going to be on the roster past this year. We don't know if McGowan's is going to be someone we really want to develop long term. Maybe Cody Martin's not going to stick around through the season because he's going to end up getting traded. So maybe it's not the worst thing that we're taking on a Baylor Shireman and just kind of working with that, right? I mean, we could even say he's going to come in at kind of the 4 or something like that if we have to. I mean, he's got some size, so at least we could have a little more spacing again. So I think this is just a situation where we just take a good name and someone that we think could be a solid enough player on our basketball team. And, I do want to give some credit to some of the guys on the board here, a Melvin Ajinça is an interesting player, but I think I'm just going to stick with Baylor Shireman and keep it simple. Baylor Shireman would make that much money. He'd get a 2-year deal out of us, and for the time being, we're going to throw Baylor Shireman here. He may be a guy that when you bring him into camp, he just outworks some of these, because he's older than McGowan's and Nick Smith and those dudes, and maybe he just does completely outwork them. The point is we've got options. Should we trade a Cody Martin and a Bertans? He might be a guy that could slide in if necessary. If not, we know he's going to be a stable presence on the team. I like that, right? We're trying to redefine the culture in this first year as well. And culture doesn't just change right away. That's something you guys need to know. It's been bad here for a while. It's going to take some time to do that. So bringing in guys that can be authoritative and can take control of things and have some maturity, when you bring in hopefully the right staff members around them, it's just going to take some time. So know that that's something that we're also trying to accomplish this year. Alrighty, we used up those 2 picks, so I'm going to slide all of this up so that we know exactly what we're working with for the rest of this time. I like this right now. There's obviously 2 roster spots left. I don't think we really need to make any more trades or anything. I think we want to remain flexible for the season should someone become available, right, that they're just trying to dump, right, and they don't really care where they're going. Not sure who that would be, but that's the point, right? We want to remain vigilant for it. Obviously, got to find another center, probably another power forward as well on the roster, so we're just going to be looking at forwards, guys that maybe a power forward that could also play center if necessary, just so we can have some depth there right now, because Grant Williams, we really don't want him playing center if we don't have to. So let's go into free agency and let's find these last 2 roster spots. And so I'm sure you guys have been wondering kind of what's going on with Miles Bridges, and I haven't touched on that for an exact reason. One, because I'm trying to comment bait just a little bit, and I want to see who actually watches the videos and who doesn't, because I know a lot of you don't, and then you go comment. But Miles Bridges is a unrestricted free agent. I don't think we're going to bring Miles Bridges back. If I want to be realistic about it, I know there's a chance of it if I'm running the show. I know Miles Bridges has gotten into some things off the court. Don't really want to talk about all that too much. I'm not here to say he's guilty or innocent or anything like that. Point is, there's been some noise, and we're trying to calm the noise down a little bit. I know LaMelo Ball just ran over a kid's foot or something in October, and now he's being sued for it. But LaMelo, we're trying to make it work with LaMelo, right? Miles Bridges, gonna let him go somewhere else. Go get your money somewhere else. Just not that interested in really bringing him back or anything. So just addressing it there. All right, so this center addition for us is an interesting one, right? We can go steal somebody if we really want to, and I think that could be really interesting. But this center position is interesting because they're going to play minutes, right? This is going to be a rotational player, whoever we go get. We want this to be someone that can go actually make like somewhat of an impact. I want to just take a look at like forwards in general. Is there somebody out there that makes some sense for us to go get and go pay? Tobias Harris is really interesting. Tobias Harris obviously just kind of had a rough end to his time in Philly, right? Value, not that high right now. He's probably going to want a place that he can go prove himself again. What better than a young team like us where we could use some veteran leadership, right? I really like this idea. Here's the thing. I can throw 2 years of guaranteed money and a pretty good amount of it at Tobias Harris right now. I can throw a ton at him. And here's the thing, like, you know, he plays for us for a season. Maybe it doesn't work out, let's say, for whatever reason. I don't know why it doesn't necessarily. He'll have a lot of guys that are going to be able to feed him the basketball. And here's the other thing, too. With Stephon Castle on the team, we need more competent shooting from the perimeter. Hopefully, Tobias Harris goes back to that. I know the playoffs happen and everything. Tobias Harris is historically a really, really good shooter. So let's hope that we've got enough playmakers around him to where he doesn't have to do too much. He's just got to be a competent basketball player, and we can get some experience in the starting lineup. So let's go after Tobias Harris. Like, when we give him all this money, if it doesn't work out, then we just have another Davis Bertans on the team. We can go get another player or something like that the year afterwards that becomes available, and we can trade them a contract that's about to expire. This is perfect. So Tobias Harris, right? What exactly are we going to give him? I think 2 years. I'm going to say 18. I know. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. $18 million for 2 seasons. No options, no nothing. You get to sign with us. $18 million, 2 years. And you get a starting spot. So that means we bump Bertans down. Grant Williams is now coming off the bench, which is totally fine. Tobias Harris is here. We've got a veteran on the team that's going to help all these guys get better right away. He gets the chance to prove himself so that after this, maybe he goes and gets a long-term contract elsewhere. Maybe it's with us. Who knows? I mean, he's like 31, almost 32, so not really sure, but maybe it's his last big payday, and then he's kind of chasing rings after that again, right? That could totally be something that happens. We want him to come here, be an on-court coach for us, right? Because otherwise, who is it right now? Like Seth Curry? That's probably the only other option out there, right? So we needed a guy like that out there. That greatly improves our starting lineup. We've got like $6 million left. What kind of backup center can we go get to be really impactful for us right away? And now this is the concern, right? Is there's not a ton of centers out there. I think Valanciunas is going to get more than that. Rashawn Holmes is a player option. He's not going to be available. Do we throw something at a James Wiseman? I'd prefer somebody a little bit older. I'm not really interested in bringing Hartenstein or anything like that. I feel like Mo's just going to be back on the Magic, so I'm not all that concerned about that. And then it starts to get real dicey. I knew this was the problem with trading Nick Richards, but I think having that pick is just going to be more valuable than having Nick Richards for this season. Like, I know we want to do better, we want to start to improve or whatever, but that 2025 class could be really valuable. So having this and possibly having 2 picks here, hopefully the Warriors are pretty solid next year in that, because they're really going to try to do that, right? They're going to try to be really, really solid. So if we have those 2 picks, we can move up in the draft, but Who can we go get? I don't think we're getting like a Mason Plumlee. I think he's going to like a contender. I think Kevin Love is as well. DeAndre Jordan wouldn't re-sign if he wasn't. So like, is Alex Len kind of the option for us? I kind of hope not. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not the best. What am I getting with Alex Len, man? I know it's not the most interesting, but we got to see what we got at the end of the day. 2 points a game last year. Yep, that's kind of what I figured. Shot well from the field. That's cool. Free throw line was pretty bad. Rebounding was pretty bad. Interesting. His on-off numbers are like pretty crazy. I know his minutes played weren't very good, and they're usually in blowout time or whatever, but kind of interesting nonetheless. So I guess if you wanted to talk yourself into Alex Len being able to contribute somewhat, that could be it. At least he's like played like a lot of NBA minutes, you know, and it doesn't have to be a ton of minutes, but he's going to have to play a solid amount. And that's where I'm like hesitating a little bit, because I'm like, this isn't like just a backup center role. Like, he is going to have to play a decent amount. Like Mark Williams, we're going to hope plays as much as possible, but he is coming off an injury, right? And like, this person may have to slide in and become a center for us at some point. Is there a reason to make a trade at all? I don't think so. I don't know exactly who that would be and why. The centers are harder to get right now because there's a very thin market for it. So I think we just gotta like buckle down and get somebody here. The other one I think about is Thomas Bryant, because we've seen good things out of Thomas Bryant before in the NBA. You know, he's got a high motor and everything. Maybe he wants the chance to prove himself on another team. Maybe we say, hey, decline the player option, we'll give you a little bit more or something like that for a year, and we give you a rotation spot that you didn't have in Miami. Like, I don't know. So maybe that's what we can hope for a little bit. Otherwise, there's Drew Eubanks, kind of the same thing, not the greatest option. I know you guys are probably screaming at the screen right now, and you're like, why not like Andre Drummond? Like, I don't know. Like, is Andre Drummond going to want to sign for like $4 million to be like a backup on a bad team? That doesn't seem realistic to me. Like, it just, that really just doesn't. Is like a Daniel Tice a better option? Is he going to want to go to a contender, or is he just going to be happy to get like $4 million and get some PT because he didn't before? Daniel Tice is obviously a little bit more mature of an option. He's not that big, and so we could run into a size problem there, but you at least got like a competent three-point shooter in the little bit of time that he was like on the court, and he's played a decent amount of NBA games as of late. Like, his rebounding is pretty good considering the minutes that he plays, gets a couple points. I don't know, how old is Daniel Tice now? He's 32. Like, do we just give him like a 1 year, $4 million deal or something? Maybe that's how I need to look at this. Like, this is a 1 year, $4 million deal, and maybe in the trade market or something, we could try and find something, because I don't see a lot of other good options. I just don't, if I'm being honest with you. I really don't. So, and I know maybe you guys are saying, oh, well, maybe you could afford him a little more if you didn't give so much to Tobias Harris. Well, like, that's kind of what like a starter's going for at this point, is like around that much. And we're trying to entice him to not go anywhere else, right? Because everyone's going to be trying to get him on their bad teams or whatever to kind of help like fix the culture up, because they know he's a really good guy and he's going to be a good contributor. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go after Daniel Tice. I know it's not sexy, and I know I spent a lot of time on this last roster spot, but I wanted to explain to you guys kind of how I'm thinking about it. And maybe you've got a better idea. Let me know in the comments. But for now, we're going to give Daniel Tice like a 1 year, $4 million contract. Daniel Tice, $4 million for 1 year. And he slides in at the backup center as just hopefully another good vet to have on this team. And this right here is your 2024-2025 Charlotte Hornets. Let's recap before you go to the comments and everything. But we added another draft pick to next season. We turned Nick Richards into that. I really, really like that. I think it's more than doable that they would make a trade like that. Obviously, it would have to happen after the draft and everything so that they could have rights to it, right? Totally makes sense. What else did we do? We brought in Stephon Castle in the draft, and we hope that we can develop him into our starting 2. Secondary ball handler for us, elite defender. We're going to have to teach him how to shoot. That's totally fine. He's going to have enough guys to pass to on this team, though, which is nice. LaMelo, when he's playing off ball, is an option. We got shooters at the 4. A shooter in Brandon Miller that loves to run around screens and cut, that can go get passes from him as well. We can put him in some pick and roll situations with Mark Williams to have alley-oop options. Really, really cool. Trey Mann, he's going to make sure that he's got some minutes still that he can operate in. We've got options at the reserve wing to fight it out. We made sure we kept Davis Bertans, yeah, as an option to trade. Like, we're gonna be on the market for trades during this season to try to look to improve, right? A star player becomes available. We package Bertans, Cody Martin, like a pick or something, because we've got 3 2027 picks that we can throw at people to where we can try to make an immediate improvement on this team, which is really nice, right? Otherwise, not too much different. We tried to bring in some more veteran leadership. That's going to be a big one, but I'm not too mad with how this team turned out. I think this is at least like somewhat of a direction, and like, okay, like we tried to put at least the right pieces in to try and be a little bit more competitive for this next season while maintaining flexibility, because there's just not a ton of options to go get a star talent right now. So we've positioned ourselves to go get a star talent. If for whatever reason we bottom out, we're going to have our own picks still. And we've got the Warriors picks that maybe we can package them with somebody and trade up and go get a guy that we really want next year if we want to. I really like it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Otherwise, I appreciate it as always, y'all. And we'll talk to y'all later. Thanks so much.